Every great fortune hides behind a wall. In business, we call those walls economic moats. They're defenses that keep competitors out and profits flowing in. Warren Buffett built his empire by investing only in companies with moats. And the richest players today are building new kinds of moats. This is how billionaires will protect the future of wealth. Welcome to Alux, the place where future billionaires come to get inspired. Now, if you look at the richest companies in history, they all built something that competitors couldn't easily copy. That is what Warren Buffett calls a moat. A moat in business is the same idea as a moat around a castle. It's the defense that keeps attackers out and protects what's inside. It's the wall around your castle that keeps the profits in. Buffett used it to describe the advantage that lets a company keep competitors from eating into its profits. A good moat makes a business hard to copy, and it allows that business to keep generating wealth for decades. A century ago, the world's strongest moats were physical and industrial. The companies that dominated were the ones that controlled the land, the factories, and the rails. Today, brand power, ecosystems, and data and networks are moats because they lock people in. Think about it. Brand power locks you in with loyalty. Ecosystems lock you in with convenience and the inconvenience of having to leave. And networks and data lock you in because the more people that use them, the stronger they get. Coca-Cola's moat is their emotional connection through advertising and their massive distribution network. Even if a cheaper brand made something that tasted the same, people would still pay more for a Coke. Apple's moat is their ecosystem. Once you buy an iPhone, it integrates with your AirPods, your Mac, your Apple Watch, and your iPad. Everything works great, but only if you stay inside Apple's world. If you're locked in, competitors can't as easily steal you away. Once that moat is already built, it's really difficult for anyone else to come in and get their foot in the door. Which is why it's so important for you to know about the moats of the future. And honestly, they don't sound as sexy or as interesting, but boy, do they ever have power. Now, the first modern moat is permission. Okay, in the past, moats were simple, right? You could patent an invention, buy up all the land, or build a huge factory. But in today's world, those moats don't hold as strongly. Patents expire, and now it's easy to imitate a factory. What really matters now is permission. Who has the license to operate, and who decides the rules? And here's why, okay? We're moving into an era of industries where the cost of failure is too high. Governments can't afford to let old Tom, Dick, and Harry launch a product from their garage and scale it quickly. Today, the frontiers of wealth, things like energy, biotech, AI, and space, could really destroy the world like we're in some kind of bad sci-fi movie. They can't allow people to build nuclear reactors without approval, launch satellites without licenses, or edit human DNA without any oversight. That means permission becomes the moat. If you're the company that wins the license, you automatically lock out competitors who don't have it. And once you set the precedent by proving safety, working with regulators, and becoming the default, you move to make it even harder for others to catch up. One clear example of this is a company called Commonwealth Fusion Systems. You see that big burning ball of gas outside? I'm talking about the sun here, okay? It's powered by a process called fusion energy, which is the cleanest and most powerful energy source that we can imagine. It's been a 70-year dream to recreate it here on Earth. The energy we use right now, like coal, oil, and gas, it's finite, right? Bad for the environment and kinda weak for what we want to do with it. Nuclear power plants leave behind dangerous waste. Everyone wants to be the first to create fusion energy. But it's really hard to do, okay? We'd basically need to hold a miniature sun outside a machine here on Earth in the most extreme conditions, and until now, every experiment has taken more energy than it's produced. But Commonwealth Fusion Systems is making some progress, and more important for them, they've got the permits, sites, and power purchase agreements to do this. The company started from research at MIT, and now they're backed by Google, Nvidia, and other billionaires. Here's how they're creating their moat. They've already proven their magnet technology. That's their technical proof. They've sourced a site in Virginia and are building a fusion plant for about 400 megawatts of clean power. That is their legal permission. And they've signed a power deal with Google to buy the first 200 megawatts of output. That is their first customer. If they pull this off, they'll lock in the licenses, supply chains, and standards, and everyone else will have no choice but to follow them. That is why permission is the new moat. You can't copy it overnight. You can't hack your way past it. And in industries like energy, health, or space, permission is worth billions more than patents. All right, now let's take a look at our second moat. It's a little bit spicier. The second moat is power. Now, power can mean two main things, okay? It either makes things happen or it stops things from happening. And the line between power as electricity and power as influence overlaps all the time. And now it's more obvious than ever, okay? Because whoever controls the supply of energy controls what everyone else is able to do. Think about it this way, okay? Most of the world functions on data centers and AI. Even when you think it doesn't, just because you don't use it or see it yourself. Your bank, your Uber, your delivery app, the traffic lights that stop you on your way home use some form of data centers or AI. And those two things need a lot of power. So the people in charge of them are also in charge of running everyone else's business and life, basically. Except we've got a major problem with the way that we use power now. The more we use it, the more expensive and unstable it becomes because there's only so much of it left. Even renewables like solar and wind energy aren't always there when you need them, like at night. So where can we get it from? Again, our answer lies in that big yellow ball in the sky. One company that's leading the charge on power is Reflect Orbital. So here's the situation that we're in right now and how Reflect Orbital plans to solve it. We use the most power as the sun starts setting, right? Demand is still high because half the people in the region are still working and the rest are cooking, turning on lights, or charging up their cars. And when the sun sets, solar panels stop producing energy. That gap creates such a huge demand on the grids that power plants have to fire up dirty gas plants to keep things going. But Reflect Orbital's plan is to fill that gap by bouncing sunlight back to Earth so that we can use power at night. And they'll do this by launching satellites with giant mirrors into space. Even if we stretched solar power by 30 minutes, we could calm the grid enough to sell power at premium prices. But did you know that electricity prices are about 5 to 10 times more during peak hours? It's expensive to run, but this is also when power companies make their billions. It's these anchoring tools of information that take regular people from broke and trying to make it to go-getters who are on their way to building wealth. But in your daily life, searching for the information on where this is happening, who's in charge, and who's winning or losing takes too much time and energy, right? You should be using that to build your empire. And that's why we're here with tools like the Alux app just for you. We've got courses by experts on starting a business, building a brand, and scaling to $1 million. To get you started today, we've got a deal for you, okay? Download the app, scan this QR code, and for a limited time, you'll get it. I'll see you on the inside, but let's get back to today's topic, shall we? So, these mirrors in space would bounce sunlight back to Earth after sunset, giving solar farms an extra 30 minutes to an hour of production during the most expensive time of day. Their moat would be timing because then they could rent out extra daylight when the grid needs it most. They'd basically own the switch after dark, so everyone else would have to pay them to keep the lights on. If they pull it off, they'll control how much it costs and when it's delivered. That locks them in and protects their profits, if they manage to do it. Now, moat number 3, we're gonna stick with the P's here. The third modern moat is place. But these days, place is more than just land or factories. That worked fine in the old days when owning the mine or railroad was enough because that gave you control over the flow of goods. Now, though, we need land and space where the technology we're building can prove itself before it gets shared with the rest of the world. Just think about the things we've spoken about in this video so far, like the fusion center or the big space sunlight mirrors. Those things need to be built, and they need to be tested. Every new system or service needs a safe, controlled space to test it in. And some random open field in the middle of nowhere isn't gonna cut it, okay? They need something that looks and feels like a real city, a real port or station, and where the public won't get hurt. They use the smallest parts of data and detail to create the perfect product, and for that, there needs to be sensors and feedback systems that track every movement for every experiment. And there are a few of these popping up already, but so far, the most advanced player in the game comes from Toyota. They call it their Woven City. It sits at the base of Mount Fuji on the site of Toyota's old Higashi Fuji factory in Japan. And here's how it works, okay? Streets are divided into layers. One lane for autonomous vehicles, another for bikes and micromobility, a promenade for pedestrians, and a hidden street underground for deliveries and utilities. Toyota can test out driverless shuttles, home robots, and hydrogen fuel systems without disturbing the daily life of residents. They're building real streets, houses, shops, and labs. Outside partners, called inventors, are invited to test products in real conditions. The first 100 people should be moving in pretty soon, and the plan is to grow it to about 2,000 people. They want to use it to be able to test out self-driving cars. They want to test hydrogen fuel instead of running everything on gas or electricity from coal. Or test vending machines, which are really popular in Japan, and something that companies there want to use as machines that monitor health data in order to recommend you a drink. Anything can be a part of the experiment and an opportunity to test new business models. The people in Woven City are called weavers because they're part of the experiment too. Just like threads in a fabric weaving together to make something stronger, the people in Woven City weave their daily lives into this project. Now, this isn't a real city, okay? It's a test course, a living lab that costs about $10 billion. From there, they gain two things. They'll hold the keys to a place that's essentially a filter. In the future, if anyone wants to sell a mobility service like self-driving shuttles, car-sharing fleets, on-demand delivery pods, or subscription packages where transportation works like Netflix, they'll want to prove its worth in Woven City, but Toyota decides who gets in. The other thing they gain here is data. They'll collect the feedback on what works and what doesn't, which basically gives them a monopoly on learning. The faster you learn, the faster you profit, so that kind of information is priceless. This is exactly what Silicon Valley is right now. It's so valuable because it's the testing and proving ground for software. If you launched there, you learned faster, okay? And Woven City is the 2025 version of that, but for mobility, energy, and urban living. It might take decades for Toyota to monetize this fully, but make no mistake, okay, the moat is already dug. They own the place where the future of living gets tested, and everyone else will pay rent, sometimes literally and sometimes in data. All right. We're leaving the peas behind now. In fact, we're leaving Earth behind altogether, and it's not by shooting mirrors up into space. The final moat, the rules for living off-world. Now, some companies set the rules for how an industry works, right? And once those rules are adopted by customers, regulators, and the market, they become the default. Think Microsoft in enterprise software, or Visa and MasterCards in payment standards. If a place doesn't accept them, they lose business. If competitors can't match those standards, then they can't break through. In the early days of the internet, companies like IBM tried to build private networks that only worked for their companies. The open internet standards like HTTP and later HTML came along, and they became the moat because everyone else had to build on top of their rules. And we still use them now. Who will set the next standard? And for what? Well, if we go big, the next standard that's gonna be a moat isn't even here on Earth. It's in orbit. The International Space Station is gonna retire around 2030. And that means the next decade will be about handing control of low Earth orbit to private operators. NASA and other agencies don't want to build another giant government-run lab, so they're looking to rent space from private companies instead. And Vast Space is one of the companies filling this gap by building smaller, cheaper space stations. Space tourism is still ultra expensive and risky, but research companies, manufacturers, and rich people want it. Over time, if costs drop, it could scale. Air travel was only for the rich for about 30 years before regular people could afford it, so there's still a long way to go with space tourism for people who aren't billionaires. Vast Space's first station, Haven 1, will launch with SpaceX, and it'll be pretty small. But the next step, Haven 2, aims to pull off artificial gravity, and that way we'll be able to stay in space for longer and it'll be healthier and more productive. If VAST succeeds, they'll set the standards for how commercial stations are run. They'll be at the front of the line for the docking rules, supply chains, crew rotations, even health laws. And once these things are in place, they'll become the default. And just like with the internet, everyone else has to play by those rules. That is the moat. Whichever company proves they can run a safe, sustainable station first will have the power to write the playbook. All right, let's drop back down to Earth one last time, okay? There's another frontier moat being built, and this one is actually underwater. Core Power Ocean, a Swedish startup, has spent years testing wave energy converters inspired by the mechanics of the human heart. In 2023, they developed their first full-scale unit off the coast of Portugal. It survived storms, but kept generating power and fed electricity back onto the grid. It might not sound very glamorous, but it is the same story as space, okay? Whoever sets the first reliable standard wins. If Core Power proves that wave energy can be bankable, they'll define the technology, the insurance terms, and the financing models. Everyone else will be compared to them. All right, so the companies that we've looked at, Commonwealth Fusion Systems, Reflect Orbital, Toyota's Woven City, Vast Space, and Core Power Ocean, they look futuristic, right? Maybe even strange. But each one is digging a moat around the future. And who knows if this is what Warren Buffett meant when he first popularized the term. It looks and feels completely different on the examples that he's used. But boy, do they ever apply to the future of wealth. When the rules are set and they own the power and the testing grounds, it won't matter who copies them. They will always secure the castle. And that's all for today, my friend. We'll see you back here soon. Until next time, take care.